Appeals to order. We'll first start out with the roll call. I see myself, Tom, Tommy, Jim, and Greg. We have a quorum. We are missing Noel, and I see Mr. Hoy. So we are set with 5 people at this point. Regarding the variance requests before us tonight, was anyone out to see any of the properties being discussed?
No.
I went to all 3.
Okay. It looks like Tom.
Seen that.
Go ahead, Tommy.
Well, I've seen one in item 1. I'm going to have to recuse myself because it's out back of my property and directly involves my business. So yes, I've seen that one, and I will have to not be involved in that one.
All right. Hello, Noel. Okay. Does anyone expect, besides Tommy on the Kavarna case, to abstain tonight?
No.
No.
Okay. Was anyone out, did you speak with anyone regarding the requests before us tonight?
No.
No.
All right, good. You're still on mute, Noel. All right. We have had the agenda handed out. Is there any discussion to be made on that? If not, we can entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. All right, we have an agenda. Regarding the minutes from the last meeting, is there any discussion regarding those minutes? Or if not, we can proceed with the motion.
I'll motion to approve the minutes. I'll second it.
Okay, we have it. We have a motion by Tommy, seconded by Greg. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we have the minutes from the last meeting approved. At this point, we should have a motion to open the floor for discussion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, at this point, I'd like to explain what I think we need to let our alternate know what his role is. There hasn't been an alternate for quite a while. And I will cite the precedent set by the previous chairman of this board that establishes the alternate as essentially one of the people up at the table in front of the room. So Mr. Hoy will be able to ask questions and give comments. You will only be able to vote on certain issues. This was what Mr. Rosenthal established when I was an alternate umpty-ump years ago. Any further discussion, questions? All right. I think we're ready to proceed. We have the floor open. We've gone through all of the stuff. So I think without further ado, we can talk to the Kavarna people. Maybe before we hear from Mike and Kayla, we can hear from Paul to set the stage.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This request is along Broadway. Actually, the request came in as 143 North Broadway, which is this property located here. In actuality, the request is at 144 North Chestnut. This is a parking lot that's separate from here, but is utilized for parking and for refuse. The request is to place a couple of dumpsters within the setback along the Chestnut Avenue right-of-way. And this is a copy of the site plan that was provided by the applicant. Kind of switched direction here a little bit. This is the alley, and this is Chestnut Street over here. And this is the location of the proposed bins, refuse bins. And I believe this has been somewhat of an enforcement issue for some time, and I think the applicant is trying to remedy the situation utilizing the variance. Chapter 1813 requires that there be a setback of all refuse or dumpsters of 20 feet from the right-of-way. So you can see that even in this photo they're proposed, where they're showing here, it should be set back about roughly 2 parking spaces, probably back in this area here. So that's the reason for the request, is a dimensional issue of 20 feet.
So could you describe the variances that they need to accomplish what they would like to accomplish?
I believe, and the applicant can probably address this, I think they want to probably go down to 0 or close to 0, probably for convenience of where those dumpsters are placed for pickup.
Okay. All right. Without further ado, we can hear from the applicants.
Hello, as said, I'm Mike. This is Kayla with the co-owners of Kavarna. We're, I guess, technically representing Sand and Son, who is the owners of the property. So yeah, basically with the bins there, our major thing is with the setback rule and with the fencing is everyone knows parking is tight everywhere in that downtown or in the Broadway district. Our big worry is by setting those back, we're gonna have a couple issues. One, obviously we lose more parking that's already extremely valuable, or not valuable, but it's scarce. And we all know that when people pull up and don't have a place to park, they just drive away and they go somewhere else. So that's part of it. The second part is if we do back it up, people are still gonna park in front of it, which is obviously gonna become an issue with when the company comes to remove the garbage. You know, I guess what we would say is signs and enforcement don't work. We already have issues with people parking in there all the time. And there's signs already up there about, you know, there is towing and fining and stuff. And then obviously snow removal, because it's on the side where we're at, and because that cul-de-sac's really actually less of a traditional cul-de-sac, and it's actually like 3 driveways more or less. Our worry too is with snow removal with the city, and then when they have the plows go through that area too, and they usually use that. I think it's probably, Paul might know this better than me, about 4 or 5 foot wide piece of grass in between our lot and the public lot to stack snow. So obviously that becomes an issue, as well as the snow gets deeper and deeper without the year. I'm not really 100% sure if I've answered the appropriate question at this point, but.
Okay. The way I understand it, you may want to have a variance for the setback as Paul described, but you also want a variance from having to put screening around it. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's correct. And, you know, I think the big part with the screening is more of the aesthetic of the area. It would be the big issue with that part. To be honest with you, I'm sure whoever, I didn't catch who else went out there to check that area. From that exact position where you stand there, we could see 3 other trash bins, including one that was on behind the Old Fort Square, that you can see without screening. So I guess the precedent seems to be set that the screening doesn't seem to be an aesthetic issue back there.
All right.
Don, may I ask a quick question? Just a point of.
You're representing, you're actually sitting out in the audience, so you may indeed ask a question, but.
Okay, that's what I was going to say, is that this is a shared business with us. So I want to make sure that because I've recused myself, but this is something that is involving my business, I can still speak to different issues towards the board, correct? As a point of order?
Yes, you may.
I think another piece of note that is important to add into this is that the trash company, there are different sizes bins. So there's a certain size bin that is on wheels. And then if you graduate anything above that, what happens is the wheels get off. And so the truck has to be able to access those bins, you know, as it drives into it, which leaves, you know, those size bins for the amount of waste that gather. And Kavarna, we decided, we had 4 bins out before.
5.
We decided to 5, correct? Yep. And so mine and theirs. And so we decided to condense to get less bins there and try and, you know, get rid of some of that area. But because we had to graduate to the bigger size, the truck can only enter from one way. The one that was, when it was originally, it was 5 bins, was in the service alley and you had to pull them out into the alley for the truck to be able to come and pick them up. And that's where Mike was talking about with the snow removal and all of that stuff. So what we've done is we've condensed and we've gone from 5 trash bins down to 2, but there's a specific place that we have to put them in order for the truck to be able to get them. Even if we moved them back in, the truck would still, in that cul-de-sac, not be able to swing around and access those bins without having to go on top of another. It's a cul-de-sac that ends. So that's the only angle in which the truck can come and get them, is where we have them placed. So I think those are some other pieces of importance in terms of the actual, hi buddy, the actual truck, the garbage process beyond some of the stuff that we can actually control.
I'm glad you interjected, Tommy, because I did want to ask you a question, but I wasn't sure how I could ask you if you were sitting in the audience. But since you have called that question, I'll do it anyway. You've kind of answered a question that I had, and that is that it's not just the Kavarna business that's filling up those dumpsters. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. We have a shared parking lot behind our building. We rent or lease a garage on that parking lot, and that access point for that garage, it's hard without the map, but it's on the same side of the place where we have the dumpsters we're asking to put them. So you can't push the dumpsters too far back, because then we can't. So where it says 20 feet, right there is the entrance to that garage. So Gather rents that for storage for chairs, tables, all the stuff we need for our events. And so, yep. So you can see the entrance to the garage right there, where that tree is. Yep. Thank you, Paul. So we share this lot, and we had 5 units all on this one parking lot and in the service alley. So we came together and said 5 makes no sense. We can share. We can go up on a size. We can reduce. We were doing 5 pickups a week each. And now we've been able to get it down to 2 with the larger bins. So we've reduced traffic. We've got larger bins. We're getting rid of multiple bins there to try and make a better overall experience for everybody.
Are there any other businesses that are partaking in this joint venture of waste bins?
Right now, it is just the 2 of us, though this goes back to what Paul alluded to earlier. So the reason why that this, I think, has technically been in violation for a while, at the very end of last year, actually around the same time last year, we were actually working with Kevin Vonk and Brian Johnson to come up with a solution that involved the city and some of their property back there, in hopes that all of the businesses who have dumpsters and stuff back there could potentially have one local spot that, again, would reduce the amount of visible dumpsters even further, not to mention just make up pickup and collection better. But obviously, since Kevin has moved on from the city, that's why I think everything was kind of sitting where it was. We were just actually, the owners of the property were contacted one day and told that they were fine, or they had issues with enforcement with it. And we were all kind of taken off guard because it had left off that Kevin and was moving along with the, I think it's the economic board. Is that what it is, Tommy?
Yeah. I think for those that know, Kevin Vonk works and moved on to a different city, but he was the economic director. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah.
He was our planning director, yeah.
Planning director, yeah. So we were working with him, as he said. We had called Brian. We called and said, hey, look, is there a better long-term solution that looks better? We all walked that whole area, Brian and Kevin and us, to try and find a different solution. We found a location that would work with the entrance. And there was kind of thoughts and ideas of building an actual, more permanent structure that had all of that stuff. It kind of fell by the wayside. Obviously, the city gets busy with different things, but it was kind of in a holding pattern. And when Kevin left, I think it went back into violation. Ultimately, I would say, on behalf of Mike and Kayla as well, is I think there is a genuine goal by us to have a more permanent, more aesthetic solution. There's no way we're going to be able to put it together within a month, and so that is something that is ongoing that we're trying to work on. I think the variance request for us is, can we get this done, then get the threat of a violation or a penalty or a fine off the table so we can engage in some of those longer term conversations to potentially come up with a long-term solution.
And to that end, too, obviously with everything that's gone on between COVID and Kevin leading, we're back at square one again. So it's not like we can just like jump right back where we were, because I think the key player in those talks to where we were is gone. And so I think that puts us, like I said, back to square one.
Okay, I have a couple of questions for Paul.
Me too.
Was this a complaint, Paul, or how did this get brought before us?
I believe it was. I don't have a full history of it, but I believe typically we would respond to complaints. So yeah, I think it's been ongoing for some time.
And does the applicants discussed that a previous city employee was working with them? Is there any activity on the city's part to continue that discussion?
I don't know that we've been approached again. It's unfortunate that Kevin left. A lot of things kind of got put to the side. So, I mean, that still could be a possibility, but I'd have to discuss that with our staff. I think there were other opportunities, like with Old Ford Square, they kind of corralled their dumpsters. But I think in this case, if it involves the city, I'd have to check with our interim director and see what her thoughts would be.
Okay, Noel, you had some questions?
Yeah, just on the fact that the petitioners, or Tommy, I can't remember who it was who said it, but we're talking about the prospect of working on a long-term solution that might be different than this. And it just made me wonder if we've got any ability, or if there's any, guidance from staff on, can we make a temporary approval of a variance? I mean, is it possible to say, look, this is a 5-year thing or a 3-year thing, and then it's got to get reviewed again? Is that something that's doable?
Yes.
I think that's a possibility, yes.
We've done it.
Because that would, as the folks are saying, remove the risk of fine and penalty right now, and give them a window to re-engage with the city. And I certainly know that there's multiple initiatives in and around Chestnut and Hubbard, and all the work in there by the Broadway folks and others trying to address some of the challenges that are presented by the parking and traffic situations all throughout there. So, maybe we just grant something that gives the planning team and the property owners along there a reasonable horizon to work something out.
Okay, I think that's reasonable, and I'll let you mull on how you want to present your motion in a bit, but I want to make sure that Mr. Hoy and Mr. Hutchison and Mr. Babcock have a chance to ask some questions.
I got a question regarding visiting the site question. From time to time, I'll use Google Earth and I'll go and look at the sites. Is that technically visiting the site?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay. Well, I did it for well, actually all three tonight. I Googled because of the interesting geometries of each one of the three applicants. And I noticed right away on this one, in the alleyway, there's small garbage bins all along the alleyway. And when I landed and looked, I could see exactly what they were saying. I could see everything that they were going to say just from standing there in 3 seconds. Okay. So I guess the one question I had is, are the parking spaces open to the public in that parking lot?
It is a private parking lot. Though what we will say is enforcement is literally impossible, and it is typically more public parking than it is actually private, though technically it's
Okay.
And we have,
it's
like I
private.
said, we have signs up that say will tow private parking, for these businesses and
Okay.
stuff. And yeah, we've had vehicles abandoned in there recently that we had to pay to have removed. And that's
Okay, so
besides the point.
technically that's a real hardship. I mean, really, you're facing right there in this. I'll say I have no issue with this applicant at all.
Tom or Greg?
So the parking lot, this is a couple of questions for the applicant. The parking lot, is it normally filled? Is the question. First question, do you have spaces that are normally open? Number two, if you were to move it, is Waste Management unable to at all access the dumpsters?
So for the first question, I will give you two answers for it. If we were to not talk about COVID, it is typically full from when we open until well after we close. Obviously, there are certain days that could be different. If you're talking about a Wednesday night, there's not a lot. Well, I take that back. There's the farmers market, but Tuesday nights, suddenly there's odd times. But for the most part, when we're open, it's packed up front on Broadway and back there. To answer the second question, it really would depend. So if we push them back, as Tommy was saying, the trucks could get to it. They have to maneuver differently, and they could be impeded. So say, for instance, across the street from our parking lot, there's those apartments back there. They quite often have, I think it's, I forget the company, but they quite often have trucks that are parked out there for medical type things and transport things. So if those were to coincide, there would be issues with the dump truck sweeping around to get to it. And then obviously the second issue becomes, like we talked about, we have huge issues with enforcement of parking. I worry that what happens when two people, so again, those apartments, we have tons of people that they park there and they go across to the apartments. They use it as their overnight parking. What happens when the dump truck shows up early in the morning to pick up and there's two cars sitting in front of them because there's space there, and so that would be our two things.
Okay. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
And I concur with that too.
Tom Hoy, do you have any questions?
Well, I did go to the site physically, and one of the ideas here, if this was complaint driven, is there's a really large apartment building that I think you just referenced, as far as people from those apartments going there and parking. On the flip side of it, I could see where they could possibly be annoyed with the truck coming in, okay? With respect to screening, I drove down farther south on Broadway, and I think the first address it's around 124. There's a Green Bay, a big open lot there. Next to the public market at 126 is a cake place. And then next to that is the sardine can. And there didn't seem to be any screening around those two dumpsters. So, I'm wondering, as far as the origination of what's going to keep the person who complained happier. I really like the idea of them collaborating with the city. And I know that Kevin Vonk was really a hard-charging employee and would drive for good solutions. So I can kind of see the apartment people's idea as far as maybe wanting some privacy, but at the same time, I see the need maybe to negotiate a parking area or a set-aside area for refuse. So that's kind of my spin. How long would you think that you would need to negotiate this pathway to a common dumpster site?
Yeah, I think it's like a knot, and you pull on one, and all these different things. So since I've owned our business, there's the back alley behind our business. All of the electrical poles that are going up in that back alley for 3 or 4 years now. There's supposed to be coordination between the city and WPS that's going to bring all of that underground. Okay, so the reason why I bring all of this up, the timing that you're asking about, there's so many factors that go in. So by those poles going underground, anything that the city builds that might be permanent, you don't want them to build that permanent and then have them come rip that up, because they're going to rip the whole alley up to bury all of those electrical wires. So you're looking at coordination there. when the electrical posts go underground or the wiring going underground, they need to put strategically through the alley electrical, I'm not sure if it's generators or some sort of power source things. And right by the current garage that I'm leasing, right on the other side is where we were talking about potentially building that corral for those businesses back there. WPS might need that area to put those generators. And so there's a negotiation happening there. So it all hinges on really that back alley decision with those posts going underground, because you don't want to double work and build something and all of a sudden have to rip it right back out. So a larger window would be the ask. We would love to get it done yesterday. We think we're doing the right thing for the district as businesses sharing, getting rid of those different things, but we're really kind of stuck with a really temporary issue. And then there's other people that are really controlling a lot of our destiny. So the ask would be, as long as you're willing to grace us with that. I think I could speak for Mike and Kayla. I think we're very open to having a time constraint on it, because this is not a solution we want permanently either. So longer grace would be the ask, because it's out of our control right now with a lot of the different things that are happening.
Do you think there could be any collaboration between your businesses and, say, the Fine Instrument Workshop that's right in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, a lot of those businesses have individual canisters that are like normal house, because they have living spaces up above and they just use their dumpsters for that type of trash. If you drive behind more north of our business, a lot of their trash is actual single, business, normal, at your house type of stuff. But that is the goal. If you look at Fort Howard, as Mike mentioned, there are a solution where it is 3 walls to a gated thing, and that whole area shares those dumpsters. We would love that on our side. And I think every business down there is on the same page. It's very cookie cutter, in terms of everybody's got different dumpsters, and having a more shared, more designed look back there would be great for all businesses, because there is so much back parking and back entrance for businesses. So yeah, 100% to your question. We would love to collaborate with anybody to use those dumpsters.
Before we go on, at this point, let me ask if there is anyone else participating in this Zoom meeting who wishes to speak for or against the variance that's before us. Yes, sir. You're on mute, I think.
Yeah, it's David Bartakovsky. About 12 years ago, 13, 14 years ago, I was on the parking committee there on Broadway. And, we came up with a solution, which I thought it was a viable solution. We wanted to make all privatized parking in the Broadway district public. And in exchange for that, through the bid money, we talked about removing snow, maintaining the parking lots for those individual people. We also looked at the railroad easement behind Berenson's Candy for possible recycling center for the whole district and things of that nature. So we looked at this about 12 years ago, and it kind of just fell by the wayside. I don't know if it's something that should be looked at again, but that way it kind of took care of the problems we always had down there about parking and trash collection and recycling and such. So just wanted to throw that in there.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mm-hmm. I think I think Noel had a good suggestion. In light of Mr. Vonk moving on, and especially in light of COVID, and especially in light of the attempts that the businesses in the area have already attempted, I think the proper thing is, as Noel suggested, is to grant a temporary variance to let things proceed and yet give us a chance to revisit this if everything falls through later on. And I'll look at Noel and see if he has any thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm inclined, if the duration that I'm going to propose makes sense, to the rest of the members here, to say, let's not make it so short that we're talking about this again and nobody's had a chance to mobilize, but, let's grant this variance as a temporary variance for 4 years. I think that would, give everybody time to look at this and even open the box on maybe a broader solution than just dumpsters, as Mr. Bartakovsky was just talking about. Maybe there's broader solutions that the district and some of the owners can explore, and then we're not talking about it, next year or something like that. But still, there's a ticking clock on it still. That's within a reasonable horizon before this has to get addressed one way or the other.
All right.
Does that sound reasonable, you guys, to say 4 years?
I'll look at the applicants, and I'll look at Mr. Hoy and Mr. Hutchison and Mr. Babcock to see if they're amenable.
I see some nodding. Tommy, you'd be nodding right now. You recused yourself. Oh, yeah.
I'm nodding on behalf of the applicants.
He's out in the public now.
Yeah, I'm in the audience nodding.
Okay, all right.
I think this is an awful long time. I don't think it would probably be acceptable to the person who put forth the complaint. I could see 2. I don't know about 4.
Greg, what do you think? Should we split the difference at 3?
That's what a lawyer would do. Yeah.
My gosh, do we have any?
Right. For the sake of advancing this discussion to a conclusion, I would move that we grant a temporary variance as requested by the petitioners, but for a period of 3 years.
I'll second the motion.
All right. I have the feeling we're in violent agreement. Therefore, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed? All right. You got it. 3 years. Get to work.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. And by the way, in our informational part, there's a question I want to ask Paul later on about another temporary variance we granted many years ago. But we'll worry about that when we get there. I think we're at the point of moving on to the next parcel, the Joseph's property on Irwin Avenue. You want to tee us up, Paul?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so this property is located at 1519 North Irwin Avenue on the west side of the street. It's a single-family home that has an existing detached garage, low-density residential area. They hope to add a second detached structure to the property. This property is also located in the floodplain. They're not asking for any exemption from the floodplain, but any new structures will have to be flood protected. Again, this is Irwin Avenue. This is a site plan provided by the applicant. The alley here's the existing principal dwelling. This is the proposed garage here. I believe there's an existing driveway and an existing garage. So the variances here, there's 3 separate variances. The first one is the size of this structure. This is considered the second accessory structure. It's over 150 square feet. So that's one variance. Actually, the second driveway now under our current ordinance is not permitted. You can only have one driveway cut per parcel for single family use. And the third variance would include the combination of the existing garage, the proposed garage. Those 2 accessory uses together are larger than the footprint of the principal dwelling. So there are 3 separate variances you'd have to consider here. Again, just an image of the existing home, the existing driveway here, and the detached garage, and some applicants here as well. These are included within your packet tonight.
Okay, good. Thank you, Paul. Could we hear from the applicant? Mr. Josephs is here, but I don't see him speaking.
I can go ahead and unmute him to see if that'll.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes. Thank you.
Yes, he kind of said everything I wanted to say about putting the garage there and all that. The garage would be moved there from Piarchi's Homes, I guess, out there on Always or whatever. They're out there, and they would move it there, a different garage that, what was it, a 12 by 24 garage over there, and the driveway is already there, so all you'd have to do is add a little bigger slab on that far end there, and you could have that garage. And my granddaughter lives in the house now, and she would like a garage a little closer to the house than the one that we have there now because it's so far away. So that's about all I have to say, and that's about all I got to say about it. My son was supposed to be here to do some speaking, but he had to work late, so he couldn't make it. So
I have some questions for you, Mr. Josephs. How long have you owned this property?
I just took this property over last year, and we had new electricity put in there, and all this other stuff, and so this would be part of, I guess, getting it in better shape than what it was, garage closer to the house, and that's, yeah, I've had it about a year now.
Do you have any awareness of what the plan was of the original owner, of why we have such a distantly detached garage?
No, I don't. I think the past owner probably bought it that way. You know, I don't have no idea why they built it way over there, but.
Okay, that's fine. I was just going to comment that I looked on the city's Brown County mapping, and the situation that is at that property now has been that way for 30 years. In other words, for 30 years, it's looked just like it is now, with nothing at the end of that center driveway, and that garage on the far end has been there for that long too. It's an odd situation. Do you have any comments on it, Paul, how we got here?
I don't. I didn't do a lot of research on it necessarily. I think the aerial photos from years ago probably speak to that. I really don't have any new information to pass along.
Okay. I'm going to ask Mr. Hoy what he saw on his physical inspection.
Well, it's sometimes hard to visualize how far 69 feet is from a photo. But when you get on the other side of the street and look across, it's pretty far. The other things that I think are maybe important to note is Irwin Street is a mix of business and residential, okay? There's an auto parts place. I think Day Electric is not, or appliances is not too far from there. And there are also electrical services going to that garage. And it made me wonder, like, okay, well, is this person thinking, because there's enough room in that garage to have 2 stalls and actually a work area. So I was kind of thinking, like, okay, well, where is he going with this? Is this going to be a business, or is he going to possibly rent out the garage for parking? Trying to figure out where, what's the best use of it going to be. The fact that it's on a commercial street kind of lends me to think I would be okay with granting the variance. Because even though it's a residential place, it's really, the garage is on one end of the lot and the house is on the other lot. So I kind of sympathize with the homeowner. I don't see any harm or foul as far as allowing them to move forward.
Okay, Tommy, Greg?
I think you answered my question. Looking at it aerially, it's hard to get a sense of it. It almost looked like it was two lots that were put together because of the distance between the two different things, the two different buildings. And there was, 2 driveways. So I thought, oh, maybe they had 2, parcels that were put together, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. So I think that question has been answered. Is that correct, Paul? That's not the case, correct?
On the Google flyover thing, I looked across the street and they have identical amount of driveways. It's more industrial, like Tom said. And so there isn't a disconnect really from the neighborhood to the across the street. So I was kind of having the same thing that Tom thought when I looked at it from that perspective.
Greg or Noel?
I have a question for the applicant. On that smaller garage, it looks like the is the driveway leading to, is there a parking in the garage, or is it more like a storage shed? It doesn't really look like it's leading anywhere.
You mean the drawing next to the house, the driveway next to the house there?
Yeah.
There ain't a garage there yet. We're gonna have one moved there from Piarchi's Homes. It'll be moved there. They said they'll even bring it there. My son drives cement truck, and he said we lay that new slab over the top of the old existing slab there, back in that area right there, and pour it so it would fit that garage.
There looks like there's a structure there already. Am I missing?
That's the Jason Properties
Yeah,
garage.
that's the.
Oh, okay.
And that's back 11. That'd be back 11 feet from this new garage that we're gonna put there. And
It's the same color, so it kind of is confusing.
Yeah, that's confusing. Okay, so you're putting another structure there in the middle of the.
Right.
Okay.
So it wouldn't take us long to do it. Just to pour that slab and have them haul that garage there and set it down on that slab, and
Okay.
it'd be there, and then they could use it and they'd be happy.
Okay.
Do you have any questions, Noel?
Well, I'm just looking at the street view in Google Maps, and I noticed like right across the alley from this guy's house is a unenclosed dumpster. But no, it's weird. Yeah, that 2-car garage on the corner almost looks. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a division in these parcels at some point in their history, or if that 2-car garage, wasn't actually a commercial operation at some point, in its history, given the other types of uses in the neighborhood and the heavy commercial across the street and other things. But at the same time, it's just because we've got some stuff that's commercial or heavy in the neighborhood here. I don't know that it argues for doing more of the same. And one of the things that I really struggle with is, this house and the adjacent property too, where Greg was just asking about that other garage that's already there. All these properties have alley access, but none of them are using the alley for their parking or for the access to their garages. They're all cutting additional street cuts, for garages, and that's just not a great design. That being said, because of kind of the existing wonkiness of this parcel and some of the surrounding uses, I wouldn't maybe argue against or vote against a proposal to grant a variance, but I'm not going to make that motion.
County mapping, I went back several years, and those buildings were there before there was an alleyway. So it's an odd situation, all right. The alleyway actually came in later on.
I see.
All right. Noel has raised some good points, but he says he's not going to make a motion on this. I'm okay with this. I think that in light of I think wonkiness is a technical term that we can cite. It just seems like that everything has been this way for so long that putting a garage at the end of that driveway that has been empty for so many years instead of a necessarily bad one. So, but I'll look at Tommy or Jim or Greg on making a motion.
I don't know if anyone else has any comments before we start a motion, but I'm fine with it. yeah, I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, that's my, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna move, but go ahead.
No, that's just my comments. It's very similar, just so on the record. It's a weird kind of situation, you know, and you're pulling out curb stuff to then adding the piece there, I think is going to actually add to an overall aesthetic that makes it look better. It's a weird situation, you know, there. I'd be curious what would be, you know, the actual solution, you know, would be just to get rid of that driveway. Is that the idea? Because that's part of the variances, right, Paul, is that they can't have two entrances. So the overall, not only that driveway, but also remove the cut and put curb back up. And then you have the one and this giant space in between, you know. So, you know, the only solution is to build the house bigger to get it closer to the garage, you know, to make that lot look good. It's a wonky is a good word.
Or do an addition to the house, but the problem is that it's in a flood plain, so that would present issues with any sort of building expansion. So really a detached is a better solution.
Yeah. So I'm okay with this. I think the uniqueness of the property and what's already there already adds some complexity. So I think it's a better solution than what we currently have.
Before we go one step further, I just want to ask if there's anyone else on this Zoom meeting who wishes to speak for or against the variance being proposed here. If not, I think we've all indicated our acquiescence in various levels of approval. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
did you want to note for the just for the record that the alderperson was in support of this?
Oh, yes, I should. I sent you guys an email today, but let's for the record note that Alderperson Kathy LaFave had gotten in touch with me and said that she was in favor of what's being proposed here, specifically citing that the applicant has need for a garage in that area. So if we did we get to the point of a motion in a second? If not, I think we're there, guys.
I'll make a motion to approve the variances as requested by the applicant.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Greg, seconded by Mr. Hutchison. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey,
1 nay, 4 positive. We have Mr. Josephs, you have your variance.
I thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just remind the applicant to stop in and talk to our inspectors about getting a permit. And again, as I mentioned, this property is in a floodplain, so it might not be as simple as putting a slab down and moving the garage there. You're going to probably need to possibly elevate that. So he should talk to our staff about some of those challenges.
Yeah, if it's gonna be too much, I'm not gonna raise it 4 feet up in the air or nothing like that, because that'd be a no-no. That would be a ugly looking mess. Because, you know, that building, what did I call them, like mushrat homes, or, you know, you're building up in the air. So if I'll talk to you guys and see what you come up with. If it's within my reason, then I would like to have it done, but I'm not going to raise it way up in the air. Okay?
That's fine. Contact our inspectors, please.
Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, we'll get to the last applicant now, the people on the corner of Dan's and Van Duren. You want to talk us through this one, Paul?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a property at 581 North Dan's, Van Duren and Dan's Avenue here, just south of University Avenue. Single family home, zone low density resident, or I think it's very density residential actually. They have an existing driveway onto Dan's. They'd like to improve a driveway off of Van Duren Street. This is a sketch from the application and from the applicants. And this is a street view kind of showing that for some reason they do have an existing curb cut here. They'd like to improve a driveway back behind their home back behind the setback line with some pavers, which is possible. The challenge here is that you're, again, only allowed one driveway cut per single-family parcel. That's a change that we made late last fall in an update to our parking code standards. Typically, prior to that, we would allow one driveway cut per street frontage. So prior to last year or this year, this would have been permissible. So they're kind of caught in this position where they need to get this variance because of the second driveway.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Are the applicants on?
Yep. We're here.
Okay, if you could lead us through the case for the variance that you wish to present to us.
Well, that curb cut's been here since before we even moved here. We've lived here for 25 years? And that's always been here. And we live on Dan's, like you said, and with 2 teenagers in the house. And, let's face it, these days you have more than 2 cars. But with being on Dan's, it's also very busy trying to pull out, especially around between 3 and 6 p.m. It takes 10 minutes to get out of our driveway. But with parking being what it is and everything, we just don't have room. So a second driveway we kind of need. We can only fit. When they redid the road in 97, 96, they shortened our driveway a lot. So we can't park 2 behind each other. We can only park 1 car in the front driveway. So we don't have adequate parking up front. So that's why we're asking for another one. And we were unaware of the fact that, because from what we read in the ordinance originally, before it was changed, was that you could have 2. So and then when we got this letter that you read the thing that we got from, it was totally different than why we had to file this variance. That's what started all this.
Says that there's a curb cut and driveway apron that does not lead to a legal driveway on Van Buren Street. So they wanted us to close the curb cut to an abandoned driveway. So that was ordinance was 9.28 parentheses 2 parentheses B. And that was dated June 16th of 20.
We talked to several people, so we are very, very confused on a lot of it, I guess you could say.
Can I ask you if you have been using this as a driveway for some time? Or
yes.
Okay. Paul, if they are to use this as a driveway, then are the pavers necessary to satisfy some small portion of it being considered a valid driveway?
Correct. So I think the original issue is the opening of the curb. I'm not sure how or why it's there, but I think maybe a complaint was filed, and I think the inspector said it should be closed because it appeared to be abandoned. It doesn't appear to lead to a parking spot. A legal parking spot for us would be a spot that's behind the setback that is paved.
Okay. Questions? Tommy? Jim? Greg? Noel? Tom?
I had a question on, there's 2 rows. Are those the pavers under each wheel that are in the drawing?
Yes.
Okay. I was confused if it was 2 driveways or just.
No. I don't draw real well.
No, that's fine. Now that I know they're pavers, I know exactly what you were showing.
Yeah, when I talked to Scott, he said, you'd be surprised by some of the drawings I've seen. So he said, do it again.
No, that's fine.
I
Thank
didn't
you.
understand that either, Jim. That was going to be my question.
Okay.
And that's permissible under the code. You don't always have to pave a full driveway. You can have, it's like the old-fashioned type of driveway where you had two paved areas and you had a grass middle. So it's certainly acceptable under the ordinances. It's just that, you know, the apron would have to be improved. They'd have to get an approved site plan, again, showing an approved driveway.
Noel, Tom, or Tommy?
Question for Paul. So trying to put together, guys, please, Jack, please, sorry. Had the, mom's working tonight, so I'm doing double duty. The ordinance had not changed with the second driveway there, they wouldn't be in violation. Is that correct? If there was the pavers down, let's say.
I think they still would be in violation as it would have been deemed an abandoned driveway or abandoned driveway cut. So we like to see those closed up if they're not utilized. If you want to utilize it, then you'd have to improve that to meet our standards. Unfortunately, in this case, we've changed the ordinance to only limit one driveway cut per parcel.
Okay, so it's kind of, if let's say it had been paved correctly or had the pavers down and the ordinance had not changed, they would be fine. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yes.
Copy that. Okay.
Well, I see, evidence that that driveway is certainly being used. And if you look at the Google map, I see a red car parked back there. There's a trailer with some vehicle on it. There's something under a green tarp that looks somewhat vehicle-like as well. We were just talking in the previous item about a driveway that didn't go to a garage, but had been there forever, and making it right somehow by putting the garage up. This seems to me to be a situation very similar. Like we've got a driveway started, and it's been there forever, and maybe we just finished the driveway so that they can utilize it. I do think in terms of the traffic situation, I remember that adjustment or widening of Dan's Avenue there, and a lot of folks got a shorter drive because of it. And the amount of traffic on Dan's is really pretty extraordinary at times. And I get that that's a tough entrance and exit onto that busy street. So by having, maybe they're less experienced drivers parking off of this driveway, it's probably a safer prospect all around. I think this is, like I said, this is something that we created the challenge by changing the rules. And I don't necessarily think we made a mistake changing those rules as a community, but I appreciate that. And I'm thinking about that as well in the consideration of this request. And I'm inclined to support the requested variance.
Okay, is there anyone else on this Zoom call who wishes to speak for or against this variance request?
As far as being a grandfather, and as old as I am, I kind of respect grandfather rights. It seems like this new ordinance stepped on Grandpa pretty hard, I don't know that I'm so comfortable with if we get to a point where we're going to review board activities, if there might need to be some accommodation made to if something is in existence prior to the ordinance change, that it's, maybe they don't have to go through this. But that's my perspective on it, is that move forward and grant the variance.
And I have a question, Paul, and maybe I missed this. When an ordinance changes like this, for me, I'm sitting here going, I would love to understand you're just going to have to do it. So sorry. The context of why that change happens. And so whether that's applicable right now in this moment, it would be interesting maybe in our discussion after we vote on this to talk about, hey, if ordinances do change, does this board get, hey, this ordinance was updated or added, and here's contextually why it was voted that way. This is the goal or what they're trying to accomplish in terms of a more unified code with, so that we're not here undoing what the goal and intent was.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic for the informational item that's down below, because you should be aware of zoning text changes because you interpret those and you possibly give variances to those. So you should be made aware of them, yes.
Yeah, at the same time, I think it's a completely valid reason on our part to take that into consideration, that the ordinance has changed and perhaps left an applicant in the lurch.
Right.
All
I'm
right.
okay with this.
I move approval as requested.
I'll second.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to grant the variance requested by the Corstens. All in favor?
I
Aye.
Opposed? You got it. You have your variance.
Do you know how long we have to get it done since it's like cold out?
year.
Well, you'll need to obtain a permit to make
Yeah.
the improvements.
Yep, we know
So I
that.
would work through that process and let Scott Nelson know that you're working on that and
Okay.
not through the time frame.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. All right. Thank you much.
You.
Thank you. Perhaps at this point, we need a motion to close the floor.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Floor is closed. Very good. Paul, do you want to lead us through the informational?
Yeah, real quickly, I just want to give you an update on 901 Main Street because you're probably expecting that to come back this month. It was tabled at the last meeting. It was a variance to reduce the width of the emergency lane. Again, as you recall, 901 and the property on Cedar that were very close, very narrow area. And the board recommended to table it for, I think, for additional information, basically. And that should have been brought back at this meeting. Concurrently, the applicant also applied for a conditional use permit, and that was going to the council the next day on 10/20. The council tabled it for 90 days. So that'll put it out until January, so that's why it hasn't come back to the board for this meeting. We also received a communication from actually a plan commission member from the council who made a request for our staff to look at and review drive-throughs and bypass lanes. So that's something that'll be ongoing. That might involve an ordinance change down the road, maybe in early December, but we're going to talk as staff about that. So I just want to give you an update that's why it didn't come back to this body, and just want to give you an update.
All right.
On that note, Paul, part of the reason why we punted was because we thought it was, cart or horse, and we thought the council was putting, the decision on us, whereas we thought, the opposite should happen, is there should be a plan, and then we're, deciding within that. Because it's for 90 days and these other pieces, is there some sort of process that will be put in place that it doesn't come before us again, so that we then delay the whole process another month, so that that stuff's taken care of before it comes to us, if needed to become to us?
Yeah, so this happens occasionally, and we talked as staff and very transparent about it. There is a use issue, and then there's kind of a dimensional issue. And we always believe the use issue should come first, and that's to the Plan Commission. They shouldn't come to the Board of Appeals unless they have the use approved by the Plan Commission or Council, or at least in progress. And they were very close together. We didn't want to waste any time, so we kind of packaged them together. But it should not come back before this body until ultimately the Plan Commission at a minimum reviewed it and made some comments. Maybe before the council, but we hope to have the council decide it, and then it can come back for consideration. Whatever the Plan Commission and council do may have conditions that might include the Board of Appeals. So you're kind of in that second position.
Well, we need to make it extended then, Paul, because we only extended this until the next scheduled meeting. So if we don't do something, they're kind of in a bind and have to reapply. So I would suggest that we make some sort of motion to continue to table this request perhaps for another 120 days.
Well, it's really not set up as an action item on the agenda. I think it's kind of understood that it couldn't come back at this point. So I think we'll bring it back at the next available meeting, which it just happened was not this meeting.
All right. Well, if you're satisfied that they're not obliged to reapply and that we don't have to do any action, I can see your point that it wasn't agendified as an action item, so.
Right.
Very good. Well, that explains where that look forward to seeing how it progresses. Anything else informational?
Procedural, I just put that on there. I wasn't sure if there's additional discussion that the board wanted. I think we'll give a quarterly report at the end of January, or at the January meeting, just about the past 3 months of variance activity that we had. But otherwise, I just kind of left it open for board members if they want to talk about some other topic.
Well, the temporary variance that we granted tonight reminded me that I think one of our other temporary variances from a while back can be withdrawn, and I'll look to the staff to research this. But when we granted a variance for the people on South Broadway eons ago to handle the river dredging process. And that was a temporary variance that we granted them. I don't think we put a time limit on it, but I think that we said that when they're done, the variance is done. In other words, it wouldn't continue for perhaps the next owner. So if you could research that, I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't maybe 5-6 years ago. But if there's something formal that we need to do to withdraw that, or if it's automatically gone at that point, just let us know. But it kind of does raise the question that if we do put a temporary variance out, in other words, it has a time limit on it, we have to make sure we have a way to enforce it, or at least to review it.
Right, and I think that's kind of staff's responsibility. I can do some research, and we'll find a mechanism to account for this one that you approved tonight. So.
All right. Okay, the next meeting is just before Christmas. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving as best we can in this situation. I think we're ready to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Bye.
All right.
We are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.